Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. The American dream is alive and well for Rocco Carriero. I am thrilled to be joined by New York-based entrepreneur, and he's got quite a fascinating story. He is really the epitome and the embodiment of the American dream. We're going to talk all about his practice. We're going to talk about his story. Let's start with that. It all starts in the very beginning. Rocco Carriero, welcome to the program.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your background first and where that came from, which you then brought to as CEO of Rocco Carriero Wealth Partners.
Sure. Basically, a little history about myself. I grew up in a mid-sized town on Long Island, New York. Town was called Patchogue, New York. I'm a son of two Italian immigrants that immigrated here in 1962. My dad was a tailor. That was kind of my first experience in the world of business, was seeing how this tailor shop operated. My parents worked hard to try to send me to college. Wasn't the greatest high school student nor college student initially, and took me a while to figure it all out. But eventually, I did, and I found my true calling, which was being an entrepreneur and helping people. And I found the perfect business which allowed me to do that, which is the world of wealth management.
Absolutely, and you are certainly sharing that entrepreneurial bug and helping people to be successful. I think from what I understand, that first entrepreneurial bug, 7 years old, as an iced tea stand with your cousins. Is that right?
Yeah, as a kid, I think I was 7 years old at the time, and my parents had gotten a new refrigerator, and there was a large cardboard box sitting outside my house, and my cousin and I turned it into a lemonade stand, and I sold, like, my cousin and I would be in this box, and for whatever reason, I sold like 20 times more lemonade iced tea than my cousin, and I couldn't understand why I would be selling so much more than him. And fast forward here, we're 50 years old today, and he's an accountant, and I'm the one, and I'm the entrepreneur. So it kind of, I think it really was really more about nature than nurture, that the pathway that life took us. So kind of funny.
Yeah, and I know you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. In fact, not all of our listeners, or not all of our guests, rather, have written a book. Your first book was called Three Chords Approach to Life and Wealth Management for Business Owners, and I know you recently released an updated version of the book. So, Rocco, what is covered inside this fantastic read?
So the concept of the three chords, which I came up with about 7 or 8 years ago, was around working with really hard charging, successful business owners. And I saw that they had three common elements to their life. They had they had their business, they had their family, and they had themselves as an individual. And the people that were really successful, truly successful, were the ones that were successful in all three areas. The ones that did not feel successful and had lots of trouble were the ones that were either successful in one of the three areas or two, but they might not have been successful in all three. And I'll give you an example. Somebody who might be real successful with money, but horrible with personal relationships with their spouse, significant other, and their kids. Or another person really successful with business and terrific around the family, but drank excessively, smoked tons, and was like a speeding train wreck, health wise. And then we started working with business owners that really paid attention to their health, paid attention to their family, and they were successful in business. And those are the ones that achieved true wealth and true success. And that's what the book is about. The book is about, it's a book on financial planning, but it also has the three chords approach woven into it, which is about business, family, and self.
So I have a lot of questions, Rocco. You talked earlier about your family. I know, again, as large Italian American family. Your dad arrived in the United States from Italy in his 20s and established a small tailor shop where you were raised along with 21 first cousins who lived within blocks of each other. How did those things sort of lead to your passion and expertise in this area of wealth management? What are some of those lessons that you've taken that you now share with your clients?
Well, the first thing is in the world of wealth management, the primary thing is that you got to help people. And so, this community that I grew up in with my family, we basically helped each other. That's how we kind of got through things. So nobody really ever hired anybody. Everybody kind of helped each other get through things. Everybody had their particular skill set. So growing up in this large Italian American family of just, family was very important. Helping others was important. That's where I got my preliminary lessons on it. And then most of the family members were business owners, right? And who owned a luncheonette, who owned an ironwork shop, who was a carpenter, who was a tailor. I was surrounded by business owners, specifically trade-related business owners. So I saw how all these different businesses operated. So I naturally gravitated towards business and helping people, and that's my story right there.
Absolutely. And, it's great. I love to hear when people are not just doing it because they read a book on the topic, but this is something that's really personal for you, which is awesome. So, you mentioned, as you've been growing up, you're helping people sort of find that solution. So I want to understand your niche, if you will, of your firm. I know you work a lot of times with folks that look and talk like you, and I mean that in the most positive of ways. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we don't screen for nationalities, but for whatever reason, we work with a lot of Italian American business owners that have similar backgrounds to myself. People that operate trade-related businesses. I was around trade-related businesses my whole life. Again, we don't screen for that, but for whatever reason, Italian American trade-related business owners like to work with us. That's the way it kind of worked out.
Rocco, again, I'm chatting with Rocco Carriero. We've been chatting about his story and his passion for helping his clients, which, as all kidding aside, he works with everybody and does an amazing, amazing job. Again, recently released his book, and that's awesome that you have truly become that subject matter expert. So we got about 2 minutes remaining in our program. I want to make sure our listeners know sort of some homework assignments, some things that they could actually put into action in the week and months ahead as we get closer, believe it or not, to the end of 2023. So if our listeners remember nothing else from this conversation, what are some of those principles that you educate your clients on and maybe that you've written in your book?
Yeah, this is I'm going to try to break it down to make basically two or three key things that everybody should be thinking about. Number one is, if you haven't done a financial plan, do one, right? And so basically you can do it yourself to get yourself started. You got to look at what are your assets, what are your liabilities, what's your income, what's your expenses, and you kind of start off with that. Number two is you got to have some goals, right? You got to know what you want for yourself. And so whether it's retirement, you want to buy a second home, you want to buy a first home, those are goals. You got to know what you need to do in order to get there, and they could be done through just coming up with some calculations. So if you have some discretionary income, you got to put those dollars away. And the third thing is that you got to make sure that you pay yourself first. Too many people, specifically business owners, they pay everybody else but themselves, right? So whatever's left over, that's what they take. You got to change the mindset. You're working really hard. If a person collects, let's just say, use a $10 for example, you got to be thinking that you got to keep that first dollar for yourself. The other $9 could go to pay everybody else and everything. And that's the third tip. You got to make sure you pay yourself first, because if you don't pay yourself first, you really won't end up by paying yourself. And what I mean by that is sometimes people confuse. They say, well, I cover my expenses. I'm talking about the money you actually keep, the dollars that you keep for investments for yourself, not your living expenses, but what you really keep after paying everything. And those are the three areas right there.
Yeah, Rocco, I've been taking diligent notes in this conversation, and I know our listeners will as well, but they definitely will want to get in touch with you and pick up a copy of your book. So I want to leave our listeners in our last 30 seconds remaining with those opportunities. How can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is roccoacarriero.com. That's ROCCOACARRIERO.com.
Fantastic. Rocco Carriero. We'll link in our show notes as well to make it super duper easy because that's what you do for your clients. So we need to do it for our listeners as well. Appreciate your expertise. Appreciate you coming on the show. We'll be sure to share it, and please do the same. And can't wait to have you back on real soon. Thanks for sharing your real passion and expertise. Got a lot more in store in the second half of the program, so don't touch that dial, Chicago, or wherever you may be listening. We'll be right back on Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship.